Well, a very, very happy Wednesday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is December 10th of 2025, and on today's episode, we are going to dive a little bit more in about this Kyle Schwarber deal, which has been circling as a blockbuster deal in the world of Major League Baseball over the past 24 hours. It was reported earlier this week that Kyle Schwarber has re-signed with the Philadelphia Phillies for a 5-year and $150 million contract. We're going to dive into that, especially when it has to do with our Cincinnati Reds. We're also going to talk about the Daniel Jones injury as the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and what does their future look like as the season comes to an end here in the NFL. But first things first, I want to invite you to be on our episode. If you want to be heard on this podcast or you're interested to being a future guest, be sure to reach out to me through the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. That is the most direct location to get in contact with this show. I invite you. I want to hear what you guys have to say. This is not just a show about me ranting. I am open to a lot of opinions and a lot of different views. And sometimes I may miss a view, and that's okay. I understand that. I'm not going to be perfect. Well, I want you to be able to communicate that to me. Let me know what you think, how you feel, and possibly even be on our show talking about these sports topics. Love to have a future guest here on our podcast. Also, Enlighten Studios is kicking off the 2026 with their new theater production called Grassroots. Come check out their performance at the Artsville Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio from February 20th through March 1st. Tickets are still available by visiting tickettailor.com. Well, look, I'm going to start off. Let's start off with this Daniel Jones deal here, okay? And this is kind of just all unraveling, and I think what sparks this conversation today is what is happening throughout this week in the possible return of former quarterback Phillip Rivers. Okay. Well, let's go back to last weekend where the Colts end up losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And throughout the first quarter, Daniel Jones, the quarterback of the Colts, got hurt, ends up tearing his Achilles, and he'll be out for the rest of the season. The Colts ended up going on to losing the game 36-19 after Riley Leonard replaces Jones, and he goes 18 through 29 with 145 yards and 1 interception. Now, let me remind you, the Colts were one of these teams that you knew was going to be good. You didn't know how well he was going to be, how well they were going to be good, and where they were going to stand at in the in as far as a postseason wise. Well, they go on to start the season 7-1, leading the AFC South, and we were most certain halfway through the season that this Colts team was going to not only win the division, but hold a high seed up in the postseason bracket for the AFC, right? Well, it's kind of been a downhill spiral over the last few weeks for the Colts. And one of the big factors is the fact that Daniel Jones, who has had this second life, even considered to be this comeback kid from New York, ends up getting hurt. And he was dealing with some minor injuries heading into Sunday's game. This was a really big football game for both the Colts and the Jaguars. And during the first quarter, Daniel Jones gets hurt. And this is just devastating. Everything that you think could go wrong for Indianapolis goes wrong all in Sunday's game. Because not only Daniel Jones is injured, Anthony Richardson is out on the IL for an orbital fracture that happened back during a pre-warm-up in October. On top of that, they end up losing. So they rely on Riley Leonard. And what do? You're a young quarterback. You're an inexperienced quarterback. 18 to 29, 145 yards, one interception, one touchdown on the ground isn't a bad resume for the first time being out there. And so this is what takes place. But now the ultimate question has to be asked Monday morning. And that is, what does the future hold for the Indianapolis Colts? Well, as far as the AFC South looks, okay, the Jaguars are now 9-4. The Texans are now 8-5 and sit in second place. I believe the Jaguars and the Texans currently hold a wild card spot in the postseason as we talk about what the deal is for the Colts. Let me look at the playoff picture here real quick. Yeah, so the Jaguars hold a 9-4 record, and they have the third seed in the AFC. The Texans are 8-5, and they have the seventh seed in the AFC. The Colts are right there, and they are also 8-5, and they are on the outside looking in. So from this team that halfway through the season, we were impressed, first of all, by how Indianapolis came out and performed. But we were certain that we could see the Colts go to the playoffs and even hold themselves in a high sitting, possibly first round bye in the postseason, to now they may not even make it. So they're also dealing with the next 4 weeks. All opponents are playing 500 or better baseball or football, and they're in the postseason picture. Well, coming up week 15 this Sunday, they're in Seattle. Seattle, for this dance, has the number 5 seed at 10-3. The 49ers is the following week at home. They're sitting at 9-4, holding the 6th seed in the NFC. And then you're facing the Jaguars, who run your division, followed by the Houston Texans, also on the road. Okay, this is not going to be an easy stretch. And for the Indianapolis Colts, this is probably one of the tougher schedules they have compared to the other two teams in the division. A few weeks ago, we were talking about, well, maybe the Chargers have the toughest schedule, and they're going to be questioned if they have what it takes to finish off a season and qualify for the postseason. Now the tables have been turned a little bit. The Indianapolis Colts is in that conversation. I'd also like to point out here that I did not expect, based off of how the season started for the Houston Texans, that Houston would be in this postseason picture. But this division that has always been overlooked, never been above par, maybe you've always had maybe just one team finishing above 500, has the potential to have not one, not two, but 3 teams finish the season above 500. And yet maybe only 2 of them, if lucky, will represent the AFC South in this year's postseason. So once a favorite team in the Indianapolis Colts as leading the AFC South, they are finding themselves a game out of first. They are finding themselves not in first, not in second, but in third place of the division. And now with a season-ending injury from Daniel Jones, who has led this team through and through this season, who has given relevancy back to the Indianapolis Colts this year, is now on the bench dealing with a torn Achilles. And now for the first time this season, the Indianapolis Colts question, well, what do we do next? Well, do you stick with Riley Leonard, who went 18 for 29, and trust that you have this young quarterback that can hopefully maintain the caliber that Daniel Jones has provided this season? The other option would be Anthony Richardson, but he's still on the IR. And so there's no interest in putting him out there on the field. But the Indianapolis Colts are not willing to turn over and give up just yet. And that's through the little bit of help that is given from some players who want to still be in the spotlight. Reported earlier this week in an article on CBS Sports written by Tyler Sullivan, Phillip Rivers is being named and has ink to paper to the Colts practice squad. The 44-year-old quarterback that spent majority of his career with the San Diego Chargers, and then when they moved up to LA, spent a few years before leaving the organization to go to the Indianapolis Colts, ultimately finishing his career, now coaching in high school football, has rejoined the Indianapolis Colts in their practice squad in hopes to give the Colts an opportunity to stay alive in this AFC postseason picture. Last time he played, the last time Phillip Rivers has played was back in 2021. And let's not forget that Rivers has 10 children that he's been raising. He coaches high school football at Fairhope, Alabama, St. Michael Catholic. And his program since 2021 is 44-19, which includes a 13-1 campaign in the 2025 season. So Phillip Rivers just got done coaching a solid football team that went 13-1 this season in high school level. On the other hand, Gunnar Rivers, his son, who's highly touted prospect for the 2027 class, according to 24/7 Sports, is listed as a 4-star recruit and the number 6 ranked quarterback nationally. He currently has offers to Auburn, Boston College, Miami, South Carolina, and his father's alma mater, NC State. So, let's remember the last time Phillip Rivers has played. It wouldn't be rare, but not unprecedented. If he were to start for Indianapolis at some point this season, he would just be the 5th starting quarterback in NFL history at the age of 44 or older, joining Tom Brady, Vinny Testaverde, Warren Moon, and Steve DeBerg. But the last time we saw Phillip Rivers on the field before his return, his final career game as a member of the Colts during the 2020 season, specifically, it came during a wild card round against the playoffs where Indy fell to the Buffalo Bills 24-7. In that game, Rivers completed 27 for 46 passes, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, and took Buffalo to the brink. The game was determined on a final play of regulation as Rivers heaved a Hail Mary from midfield to T.Y. Hilton, but Buffalo defense back Micah Hyde knocked it down to win the game. This was the same year that if I'm not mistaken, the Kansas City Chiefs won that year, right? Because I remember 2020, I moved out to Kentucky, and I was listening to the Super Bowl on the radio as I was driving through into Arkansas on a Sunday night. So, is it possible to see Phillip Rivers come out of retirement and rejoin the Indianapolis Colts to give them life in the postseason? I think it is more realistic as anything one can imagine. And I think it's a right doing. Now, obviously, reporters are going to question his ability. He's 44 years old. He's been out of the league for nearly 5 years. And maybe he could still throw the ball. Maybe he's still in good shape because he has 10 kids. But is he able to pick up where he left off at be this inclusive person in order to help this Colts team salvage what's left of a career or of a season that was once a miracle from many viewpoints. I like this story. I like this proposal. And and look, at this point, it's what do you have to lose? You're 8-5. You're one win away from at least finishing the season off with with a winning record. Yes, you have some tough opponents, and you really have nothing else to lose. It is a do or die because at the moment you're not in the postseason picture. If the playoff begins today, you're on the outside looking in, and the Texans and the Jaguars fill in your position. So why not? I've been supportive of Phillip Rivers in the past. I don't think he's done anything wrong, and he's not trying to proclaimly stay in the spotlight. He's trying to fill in some shoes that the Colts don't have many options. And so if he could give this team an opportunity to come out and to at least finish off this season and give the Colts fans some hopes, then I'd be inclined to at least see what he has to offer on the field. Now, he's already signed that practice squad. Whether or not he actually is capable of fulfilling the needs and start a game as soon as Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks, that's questionable. Maybe he doesn't play this coming up week. It's a strategy that comes to the territory is how soon can you be ready? And I don't know. Maybe you take the Seahawks game on the road where it's already going to be difficult. You don't risk anything. You throw in Riley Leonard. You let him just play, see what he's capable of, and then evaluate Rivers next Monday, possibly come back home to the 49ers at home, and just go 1 week at a time. But they're in a pivotal situation because they are tied with the Texans. They do see them one more time, but they do have to maintain the Texans' record and match it fair to fair. So if the Texans win, the Colts are going to have to be able to win. And the question is, well, you're going up against some tough teams, so it's a pick and choose your battles. If Rivers is not ready for the Seahawks on Sunday, will he be ready for the 49ers next weekend? And then definitely needs to be ready for the Jaguars in almost a must-win game. And if it comes down to the final game of the season in Texas, against Texas, in Houston, then is Phillip Rivers capable of proceeding that? And I think if there's any other, out of all the options that you look at for Indianapolis Colts, Phillip Rivers may be the most absurd and more laughable stock of a choice, but it's the most ideal choice that that the Colts currently have. So, as we develop this story, as we learn more about it, we will keep you informed. But the highlight coming out of here, the AFC South, is not the Jaguars holding down the division. It's not the Texans in the 7th seed of the wild card spot. It's what Indianapolis does to salvage a season for what they were already put together early on. So, in my opinion, I can see Rivers happen. I think it would be a nice, fun little story to tell, and we will get a kick out of it, in my opinion. So, all right. So, I wanted to talk to you guys and dive a little deep about the Kyle Schwarber deal because it has some changing aspects when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds. Well, how does a Philadelphia Philly player have anything to do with the Reds? Well, remember, Kyle Schwarber was on the Reds' radar. And this offseason, we've heard some rumors about the potential interest that the Reds had for Kyle Schwarber. And I know we've talked on this podcast in previous episodes about the Reds trying to make some sort of splash this offseason, and signing a deal like Kyle Schwarber does the deed. And I was thinking about this after yesterday's podcast when I broke the news, and I was trying to gather some thoughts about this. And I'm just thinking to myself, a Kyle Schwarber contract signing a that type of caliber contract or deal for the Reds is ultimately satisfying enough to me that I don't care what else you do this offseason. I'll be perfectly satisfied. And I'm thinking about the other names that I have on this list, like Pete Alonso, Cody Bellinger, Josh Naylor, Ryan O'Hearn. And I think about, when was the last time the Cincinnati Reds acquired a player that was significantly going to improve our at-bats, our power hitting abilities, maybe defense abilities. That is a blockbuster deal that you wouldn't ever thought of that the Reds would have been able to sign off. And I was listening to a couple other podcasts talk about something like this. And the closest person I think comes to mind is Mike Moustakas. And we already know that kind of was a failed experiment and a dud because it didn't turn out. So I'm still on this hype that the Reds can make a splash and sign this contract and sign somebody that's not just your average Joe name, that is someone in the top tier free agent list that is good enough to say, if that's the only transaction we did this offseason, we will be satisfied with. I mean, we're talking about Kyle Tucker, maybe a Luis Ariz. Unfortunately, it's not going to be within Kyle Schwarber. So the other thing that I was thinking about too, and I'm glad that they released this, is that it's great and all to talk about the interest that the Reds have for a player. You could almost say that the Reds are interested in everybody that's on the free agent market. I don't care. And maybe this is just me. So I understand, for example, the Edwin Diaz situation. He is the best closer in all of baseball today, in today's time. And I would be dumbfounded. This is my thinking process. I would be dumbfounded not to see all 30 ball clubs at least throw out a offer, even if it's unreasonable and they can't match it, and you know that Edwin Diaz is just going to turn the cheek. It would be dumbfounded not to see a single organization to at least do their due diligence and throw out an offer to Edwin Diaz saying, we would like you to be our closer for our ball club. We know Edwin is not going to go join the Marlins. We know that Edwin is not going to go join the Reds. Okay, we know that those are, and even if he wanted to, he'd have to take a significant pay cut to a team that more than likely is not even going to win a season and take that risk factor. And I don't think Edwin is, it's not about that. If I was Edwin, I wouldn't take that. So that's why an Edwin Diaz deal with the Dodgers makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't matter. As an organization, I still would be dumbfounded not to throw out an offer for at least saying, hey, we are interested. You are the top player in the closing position. We want you. This is what we have to offer. I mean, we're already scrambling our heads. The fact that Reese signed Emilio Pagan and gave him $20 million for 2 years. I think a lot of people are still surprised that we're willing to put in that much money to lock in a closer. But it got me thinking that with the rumors that the Reds had with Kyle Schwarber, what was the Reds offering? How serious were they interested in trying to pick up Kyle Schwarber? Well, I saw this article this morning, and it did talk about the contract, the offer that at least the Phillies compared to the Reds are making. So we know that Kyle Schwarber re-signed with the Phillies for a 5-year, $150 million. And I think of 150 million. I say that's ludicrous. I don't see where any of that comes into the Reds payroll schedule. But I was also, interested to see what the Reds offered. So the Reds offered a 5-year deal for $125 million guaranteed contract. Now, the addition to that was room for improvement or room for growth. And I think you could kind of leave that out because let's face it, the Reds ain't going to give Kyle Schwarber an extensive contract, 2 years down the road, even if he was MVP and he took the team to a World Series. Not going to happen. I don't see that coming from the Reds. You would be more of okay, well, you could opt out after 3 years or after 2 years. That's what I could see happening. And then we'd be stuck still paying, $100 million to Kyle Schwarber to go play for a different team. But apparently, the reports had it out that the Reds weren't just interested in Kyle Schwarber. They were also interested, according to MLB.com's writer Brian McTarget, the Reds were also interested in seeking outfielder Jake Myers from the Houston Astros. Jake Myers is a center fielder. He is coming off of probably one of his best seasons yet, batting .293, only 3 home runs. But he's a really good defensive player. And so you'd be adding not one, but two. I think the Reds were hoping, hey, we're going to probably hopefully get away with a city discount, hometown discount with Kyle Schwarber, considering he's just 30 miles away from Cincinnati. We could probably get him down here and then pick up Myers for maybe 1/10 of the price of Schwarber. And now we picked up 2 guys for $150 million. What a deal is that? And don't get me wrong, that would be such a good deal. I'm saying, what are the Reds doing? How are they cooking? And you say, this is a team that's serious about a postseason run, right? They're adding additional players that they know can contribute offensively. And we know where the Reds really need help at. The Reds really need help at offensive power. So I see a batting average of .293 on base. Okay, he has the bats. He's able to hit the ball. I'm not worried about the home runs. And I'm like, great. Nothing has been officially done yet. That's one thing I need to remind us as we look at to these deals. It's great to see what the Reds are actually offering to try. Reality is as shown, is that it is going to be difficult to add a top tier player to our roster based off of our organization and who we have under management, under staff, and under players. Where we're located at, I'm sorry, and I'm not here to complain, but the Reds are in a humidity. It's either cold or it's humid. There's no in between. And do you really want to endure that? What does the team look like? Yeah, you have Ellie De La Cruz and you have Key Brian Hayes, which Hunter Green. Now you got Emilio Pagan. Bullpen isn't complete yet, but we're making progress. Is the Reds convincing enough, knowing that they only came off of an 83-win season and they barely scraped by? If I'm Kyle Schwarber, I'm also taking those into consideration. Where you already know you're in Philadelphia, you've been in there for years, you've been well established in Philadelphia, you are loved in Philadelphia, you're honestly not that far away from home logically. You are going to go see the Reds at some point this year, so you are able to stop by home. And so, to me, I'm not, plus the Phillies have also been winning. And so whatever reason is, maybe it's just money. Maybe, hey, $150 million looks great. I don't know what the taxes come out to be. But the reality is that Kyle Schwarber signs with his team. And the hope is not set. It demonstrates the challenge that we're going to have for other players. that is on this list. Now, also in a report coming into here, want to give credit where credit's due, coming from the Cincinnati Reds.com, SI.com website from Greg Kuffner a couple hours ago. Also shows that according to Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic, the Reds are also interested in signing and possibly doing a trade with possibly a guy like Ketel Marte from the Arizona Diamondbacks or second baseman Brandon Lowe from the Tampa Bay Rays. And I'm trying to just kind of look at where I stand. And, I created that wish list a couple of weeks ago. And no, none of the second basemen I had on that list, this was based off of free agency. I had Jorge Polanco, I had Luis Rengifo, and Ahmed Rosario. All candidates that I would like to see if we didn't do a trade. If we picked up a second baseman as a free agency, who could we get? And I like the names thrown out. Ketel Marte. I don't know much about Brandon Lowe. But look, Marte, in last season, he was batting .292, 61 extra base hits, or in 2024. He took a little bit of a step back in last season to .283. He still had 56 extra base hits, and he's 32. And he's under team control until 2031. So a trade could lock in that second baseman, and we kind of had this conversation. I like Matt McLain at second base, but I feel like he's a utility guy and he's a versatile guy across the entire board, not just within second base. And so if we don't pick up a second baseman, the concern that I had for this organization was that you're taking a guy who probably performs better off the bench and can play almost any position in Matt McLain, and you're restricting him to second base. Picking up a Ketel Marte that even if he's starting to decline, he's still giving you above 270 average, which that's what I want to see. He's giving you about 40 to 60 extra base hits, which is great. And plus, you could get him for a couple of years. So we're starting to fill in this. We have the left side of the field with Brian Hayes and Dela Cruz. Now you have McLain on the second base, right side of the field. And whoever whether it's Spencer Steer, whether you get a first baseman, maybe it's Christian Encarnacion. I mean, you have options, but you're completing that diamond, which now we can have focused on the outfield and what we can do there. Let's take a look at Lowe's numbers. I mean, he isn't on the same level as Marte. His OPS is over 700, for 3 consecutive seasons. Last year, he only batted .256, 50 extra base hits, but he also included 31 home runs, and he becomes a free agent after next year. So maybe you risk, you cash in on him, bring in the bat over. He's a little bit, so instead of the on base percentage, you kind of back off and say, we're going to hit you for home runs. Well, Marte is going to be on base and utilize the base running skills, which I think that the Reds are, the way that they're dynamically put together at the moment, they're now a power hitting team. I go back to just the concept of Moneyball, right? Where you want to get on base and score in the guys on base and do it that way. That's where I think the Reds, strength is at, is when getting players on base is trying to score them in, especially when you have those outbreak innings. But these are just two guys that it's not free agent. You would have to deal with some trades. You would have to deal with some people, which that would be a whole nother question of who you would deal with. But makes interesting conversation to saying, okay, well, you didn't get Schwarber. There's still Jake Myers as a possibility. There's still Marte, Brandon Lowe. I'm seeing something cooking. It's let me see the final dish. Because the talks here are all great. Don't get me wrong. But we could talk about who best fits this Reds until kingdom come. The bottom line is it's going to be up to Nick Kroll and the Bob Castellini to actually put pen to paper and make a deal happen. And in a way that you're only sacrificing talent that we're still only going to be take advantage of. We can't take a step backwards to go gain some of these people. We got to continue taking the step forward. And I think Reds fans want to continue to take that step forward. And the only way to do that is by signing and getting some of these deals done. I was looking at this list real quick. And like I mentioned with the Kyle Schwarber situation, I don't need 5 or 6 different free agent signings to put this ball club together. We're focusing ourselves right now on at-bats, power hitting guys that could be a threat in the cleanup spot, 3, 4, 5 spot in the lineup, and take a little bit off of Ellie De La Cruz, take a little bit off of Tyler Stevenson, take a little bit off of Spencer Steer in that aspect, and just take their on the responsibility of you're coming in here to hitting bombs. Whether that is you also needing to play a defensive position, that's just a bonus. But we have a designated hitter spot that we could use for you. And I know Pete Alonso was tied along to those rumors. Now I see rumors as Pete Alonso may be going to Baltimore, which I'm not a big fan of either. But that's just how Major League Baseball works. I threw out names like Eugenio Suarez, maybe giving him a second life in Cincinnati could catapult him to that next level, and we could see the benefit of that reward there. Yeah, he's a third baseman. We talk about maybe a transition over to first or a DH position. Josh Naylor is also another guy on that list. I know he's kind of has taken that downhill list over years. Not the same player as expected, but he still brings something to the table. Ryan O'Hearn moved from Baltimore to San Diego last season. Maybe you give him back an everyday role for the Reds. First base, DH, even some outfield. I mean, that's a guy that I would be circling, at least contacting. Luis Ariz, who is trying to hit this free agent market. I think you may be overpaying for this guy, but it's still worth an ask. And then outfielder Cody Bellinger. I mean, and then let's throw in outfield Kyle Tucker. Look, a lot of these names are probably far-fetched, and you're asking yourself, well, this Cincinnati Reds team is not, I just can't see them even wanting to offer that to somebody like these top-tier names. But don't forget, Cincinnati's rich in history. We're ready to win. We have Hunter Green. We have Ellie De La Cruz. I believe that we have enough talent that, hey, we just need a few pieces. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. Hey, let me not remind you, we got Terry Francona over here, who's one hell of a manager. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. I know it for a doubt. I feel like that resume is good enough over here. I hate being the last dog at the litter, where we just scrape the bottom of the food bowl and we scrape whatever's left. I don't want to be that. Let's make some action this, winter meetings. Let's get something in and give us some Christmas presents to open up here heading into the 2026 season. Because that's what I would like to do. Change the atmosphere, mix it up a little, because I don't know when the last time we've seen this happen, but Cincinnati definitely deserves to take progress forward. And great, like I said, we've seen it all. We're hearing it. We're seeing these reports, but that's all they are. They're just reports until they're actually pen to paper and we see a blockbuster deal and I could come on here and talk about it. All they are is just reports. And so, maybe that encourages, maybe someone's listening to this and it encourages them to make that little move and a big step forward in this organization coming 2026 season. Well, that is all the time I have for you guys today in this episode. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I appreciate everyone's support, whether you guys are listening to us on our audio platforms or watching us on our social media accounts. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content and have those notifications on so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, thank you and have a wonderful day.